Welcome back to Squawk Box this morning. PCE inflation data just crossing moments ago, coming in just as expected. And here with me right now at the Aspen Ideas Festival, Mary Daly, President and CEO of the San Francisco Fed. And we couldn't be more pleased to have you.
I'm glad to be here.
So let's do what we just do with the experts. And you are the expert. What did you make of this PCE number?
Well, it came in as expected, as
Right.
you said, and it is just additional news that monetary policy is working, inflation is gradually cooling. That's a relief for businesses and households who have been struggling with persistently high inflation. It's good news for how policy is working, but there's more work to do. Not done yet.
Well, so not done yet, and that's been the fundamental question. I was speaking with Larry Summers yesterday, and we were talking about this very issue of just how quickly inflation really comes down and whether monetary policy is going to be tight enough.
Well, we're getting evidence that it's tight enough. It's really challenging to look anywhere and not see monetary policy working. We have growth slowing, spending slowing, the labor market slowing, inflation coming down. That's how policy works. Now, it's taking longer than we'd all like, of course, but that doesn't mean it's not working.
Okay, but just give us a little bit of the timeline, because I think we're all trying to figure out what you're thinking about when September comes, what you're thinking about when November comes, what you're thinking about in this calendar year.
In this calendar year, as you know, we are data dependent. We've said that before. Yep. Right now, I'm looking at scenarios. If inflation stays stickier than we would like or comes down more slowly than expected, then, of course, we'd have to hold higher for longer. That is our commitment. If, on the other hand, we get inflation coming down like it did at the end of last year and the labor market is staying intact or falters, we can actually adjust policy to respond to that. It's really too early to tell, and I find projections of exactly what we're going to do to be not optimal. The American people want to know we're on the job and we're going to pay attention to both sides of our mandate.
Okay, now I'm going to make an argument to you which you may disagree about,
okay,
which is that last night's debate performance has actually just thrown a huge amount of uncertainty into the economy, which is to say that if you believe that President Biden, that even the possibility that President Biden gets replaced as the nominee, that there will be a lot more uncertainty about what this election looks like. Well, therefore, that may change how a CEO decides to invest or spend money, at least between now and November.
So let me take a different perspective on that. One of the jobs of a regional Fed president is to be out in the community, out in the district. So I have the 9 western states. That's a lot of different businesses, talking to the Utah, Arizona, Nevada, all the coastal states. What I'm hearing from CEOs of small, medium, and large firms is they already feel uncertain. They've been uncertain for the last year. They're uncertain about when inflation is coming down. They're uncertain about the strength of demand. They're uncertain about the global economy. And what they're doing, though, is they're continuing to do their core work, and they're ready to respond to the world that they're given. And I think of that as just generally what it's like to be an entrepreneur.
But there's two types of uncertainty. So, you talk to some CEOs and they say, look, maybe under a President Trump, there might be some kind of macro uncertainty about just lots of different types of uncertainty. But they would say maybe under President Biden that there could be more tangible forms of uncertainty. What happens to tax policy in 2025? Things that they can actually look at in a more very specific way.
Well, the job of CEOs is to think of those options. The job of the Federal Reserve, we're apolitical, not going to talk about the debates or speculate. The job of the Fed is not to speculate or hypothesize. The job of the Fed is to look at the data, respond to the information, and make the best policy to achieve both our goals, full employment, price stability. I don't feel like that is not working. Monetary policy is working. We're getting the job done. And that's what Americans want from us.